I was talking about my gout. I had another hit of gout a couple of days ago, and it's a bear. I'm just walking around hobbling. They said, "You're going to take a hike today?" I said, "No, I'm going to take a limp." Mm. Yeah. So, but the Advil is working, and Bhakti laughs when I say basketball Thursday night. That's my plan. Basketball Thursday night. She just laughs. And we're here in Mendocino. If you didn't, I put all these things on Instagram. Instagram is now messing with the format, so some of the videos aren't so good, but a lot of Instagram updates. So 410. I am recording, so let's I think we should just get going, and then she can watch the video if if she really wants to. She can watch the video. And does that sound good, everybody? Start. You want to get going? Yeah. No. 1, 2 thumbs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Susan, is that you? Is that a thumb? One mug? She got a thumb up. All right. Okay. Skylar, why don't you start? Tell us what's happening. Tell us what you thought of the material. Read us some work, and you know the drill.
Yeah, I knew you were with me because I don't have much to contribute to. I did spend some time working with Neelan's essay. I really struggled with it. I take her at her word at the end when she concludes and says that she wanted this paper to not just be read, but to be used. And I could not find anything actionable for me in terms of how I might approach poetics. So I want to hear what other people have done.
Okay. Tell me the name of the essay again. I didn't quite hear.
Beyond.
Proprioception.
Yeah. Beyond.
Okay. Do you want to pass then and come back?
No, I'll go ahead.
Okay.
I guess part of my issue is I wasn't familiar with the other works of art that she referenced as a big part of each chapter. And I tried to do my best with like the Sparks Notes version, but that's pretty weak. I think both this and the clips about Lorene Neidiger, both really made me want very much to start reading Neidiger and start going back to the original sources that were referenced in the essay. So that's kind of the reaction I was having to it. But I was having a rough week. I was fighting with my workplace. I found out my gallery show was canceled because the gallery is closing unexpectedly. It was just a rough week. But the good news is I found out I also get a chance. I'm going to be spending spring break in New York City. So yay. In a nice apartment on the Upper West Side, a block from the Hudson River and 2 blocks from Central Park. So anyone have any suggestions for me while I'm there for a week, let me know.
What's the occasion in New York?
A friend of mine is apartment sitting someone's very nice apartment while they're in Europe, and I just got invited to tag along. So yeah.
All right, so that'll be everybody's part of their check-in today. Will be New York City tips on what to do in New York City.
I'd appreciate it.
And do you have some writing to share?
Well, I do. I've got a couple short ones. The Neeland article was talking a lot about Marcel Duchamp, and it just so happened I had just written something that referenced Duchamp, who I like quite a bit. And then I also have another one. You had asked about if our writings referenced any of the history of the place. And so I had written something about my neighborhood in particular, and some history in my neighborhood. So I've got two I can read, the little short ones. Let me go ahead. Nude Descending. And this is based, of course, on the work that I think probably most of the people here are very familiar with, of Duchamp. Pardon my attempt at French. The Salon de Pendants rejected Duchamp's painting for their Cubist show, insisting a nude never descends the stairs, a nude reclines. Recline, not this nude. This nude in 1913 has places to go, downstairs in this moment, and somewhere in Einstein's brain, the gravity that lets us use stairs architect a series of interrupted falls. That same gravity tugs on his neurons and explains to Albert that one body inevitably attracts and moves toward another body passing by. What a relief to the top-hatted, to the corseted and bustled crowds at the Armory show, not distracted by the curves and globes of sex implied by more insipid nudes of the time, sated, unclothed, religious, bored, to see by electrified lights the real motion, they'd all felt it, of this human body and their human bodies, the tingles encircling their waist during interrupted falls into one another, falling into real and happy and untamed destinations.
Excellent.
And this, of course, is the image caused all the kerfluffle in 1913. But I want to show you guys how awesome people were, the contemporary. Here's a cartoon made that same year, seeing New York with a cubist, the rude descending a staircase, rush hour at the subway. And then I also had to throw in this Calvin and Hobbes, where Calvin reenacts the famous painting toward an unappreciative audience.
Can you read that? Can you read it? Because it's a little small for me in the middle there and at the end.
Calvin?
Yeah.
Hey, look at me, nude, descending a staircase. And then he's telling Hobbes, nobody understands art.
Oh, that's so classic.
So anyway.
That's so classic.
So that was my.
Well, that's a good week's work, especially with shit going down.
Yeah. And then
good.
And then I have the one I wrote about my neighborhood. Well, about my house anyway, in my neighborhood.
You gonna read that one?
Sure. This is Afterglow in College Hill. In our neighborhood, the houses are over 100 years old, so some have ghosts. For the last 25 years, across the street, buyers at 214 North Fountain discover Mrs. Underwood, who let rooms the last years of her life, busy cleaning and straightening after those college students. Her last two tenants never saw a classroom, but saw an easy mark. We neighbors got suspicious when we saw them carting off a sideboard. Poor Mrs. Underwood's unfinished business, putting her house in order after those girls trashed it. For a long time, I didn't think I had a ghost, but it's because Roger S. Hurd, director of First National Bank, is so quiet and well-mannered, not like his wife, who hosted and attended countless dinner parties, dances, picnics, bridge groups every single week, all meticulously reported in the Eagle during the 20s and 30s. I think Roger is glad for a quiet evening at home, while Mrs. Roger visits her old friends on 2nd Street for round after round of gin rickeys and gin rummy. Roger, he just hangs around with me, reading over my shoulder ancient clippings on newspapers.com. The computer screen's glow passing through him, shadows dancing on the ceiling.
Fantastic.
There's a little article, one of many articles about Roger that appeared in the newspapers of the time. Yeah.
That's amazing. Beautiful check-in. Yeah, when I was talking about history, I was thinking about what's happening where you live when your ancestors are hiding out from both armies in the Civil War. So I don't know.
Oh, well, that would be interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, there may be some interesting things going on. If you get into that, you might be able to weave in. I think with a project like yours and any real serial thing, that the more sources we have that provide angles or potential narratives or whatever, the richer the book is. So that's what I would suggest. And in terms of New York, I really loved MoMA and I
Okay.
really loved the Village Vanguard. Those were two things I had to do, and they were fantastic. The docent there was really remarkable, one of the best docents ever, as you would imagine, in a place like that. And regarding the proprioception, I hope we'll have a robust discussion of that today. I think what I liked about Irene Nealon, and there was a lot of art that I didn't know. I knew the pointillism, and especially from growing up in Chicago. And what is that? Surratt, is it?
Yeah.
The Day at the Beach, that one, which is gigantic. You come in this room and it's right on the wall. As soon as you enter the room, boo, it's there, and it's fantastic to see. But I'm fascinated by this notion of proprioception, especially as I'm hobbling around Mendocino, California, and walking. It's painful to walk, and seeing how it throws my whole body off. Certain what you can do, what you can't do, how you make corrections for, and it's basically a proprioception kind of thing. It's also a personal mythology thing. Of course, I said, Bhakti, what is? She's got the app, the Louise Hay app on her phone. So she talked about the need to control, right? Which is what gout alludes to. So I'm just fascinated by this notion of proprioception, the fact that Olson was trying to make a suggestion to get us into our bodies and out of our heads, and not just said, get out of your bodies, but look at this concept to get into your body. And I'm just blown away by the possibilities of it now that it's come up, basically because of this class, because someone in this class heard Fred Watt talking about proprioception and say, yeah, what's that about? So there are more essays. One that I'm chewing through, it's like 47 pages long, which is more from a scientific perspective, but it's not written in scientific jargon. I mean, it has a lot of jargony words, but that's because of the specialized field they're talking about. And I'm also very interested in like that exercise that Tim had us do. Felt very much like the beginning of Latihan, So that kind of combination to me is fascinating, and I hope to get some stuff to report to you all about it. But I'd also welcome other thoughts about proprioception, as Skylar has requested. And remember, part of your check-in, KJ, I'm glad you're in. Part of your check-in will be places in New York that you recommend Skylar go to. By the way, I went to the falafel place around the corner, I think, from Village Vanguard, and met Joe Lovano there. He was coming in for falafel before the gig, and I liked his hat so much that I said, I've got to get me one of those Joe Lovano pork pie hats. So I got this one here. But Joe Lovano was the inspiration for that. And it was so nice to meet him before the gig. And it was very warm. And then after the gig, he came by and gave me a little shoulder rub after they played. So yeah, the Village Vanguard, classic place.
Okay.
The music's world class. The oldest continuously operating jazz club in the world.
Okay.
I felt a little claustrophobic waiting in line, like getting down into the club because it's very narrow, and then they take like one party at a time, and I'm like, don't leave me in the middle of this narrow staircase. I'm kind of feeling claustrophobic, but after that, it was okay.
Yeah. Well, I have kind of an in the local Wichita and Sedgwick County Historical Museum. The director there was best man at our wedding. So I've got a source if I need to get some more historical stuff.
Yeah, I would definitely hit them up and just give them a sense of the time period that you're after, and see what happens. And from anything from there, depending on where your story goes, because your story includes your own self. So, stuff that's happening now, don't be afraid to put that in. Don't be worried about making the narrative all, about that period of time, but from then to the future and your own stuff included. I think it would be relevant to that.
Right.
Who's next, Skylar?
Tim is next to me on the screen. So I say Tim.
All right. The New York City tips. One of my favorite places in New York City is to visit the public library because they do amazing shows beyond being a library. I've seen paper making shows. I saw a show on garbage that was phenomenal. So I always try to visit the library. And if you want a little vertigo, visit the Guggenheim. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but the spiral staircase, I can't even stand on the edge. I have to crawl up this thing next to the wall because it sends me spinning. Yeah, things. So proprioception. We did that. I did that thing last week, but the week before I talked about Booker the Buddhist, who had the enter a room like a cat. I talked about that a little bit, and I used that twice this week with people while I was teaching them to throw axes. These ladies told me they were terrified. They were terrified, and I said, "I'm terrified. Nobody's ever been hurt. We're going to be fine." But in a matter of less than a minute and a half, I took them through that little exercise of putting their hands on their belly, breathing deeply, trying to ground themselves, and scanning the room from left to right and right to left as with your eyes as wide open as possible. And it was successful in both cases. They were able to, at least for a little while, leave their fears and anxieties behind.
Did they hit the target?
Yeah, they have. I'm a pretty good coach. Maybe a little too empathetic. I want everybody to succeed.
You're the best axe coach I know.
The whole, while reading the whole proprioception article, I've kept going back to a workshop I did years ago with these somatic meditation people, and it was all about our bone structure. And so we took these guided meditations into our bones, and because all we really see in life are dead, dry bones, but the bones are these living fluids passing in and out, porous, flexible. Bones actually have their own layer of skin. And I just say all those things kept popping up when I was reading about that, because it's like just the discussions about the fluids also in our bodies, and thinking about how they react to the environment we're in. The way the cold affects my arthritis, kind of things. All those were dancing around. So a lot of density in that. So I don't know how much I've actually taken in, but it took me many places. I love the little clips and the short poems that Lorraine Niedecker.
I think it's Niedecker. Yeah.
Niedecker And it makes me think, how all of that could have been lost again, and how many times that actually happens when we have somebody creating great work that is discovered later or never perhaps discovered at all, is what I'm wondering about. How much is lost because people weren't in the public eye. My song that I chose for the exercise, Paul, so just listening to the song lists very similar things, list the beautiful guitar work we're listening at. But then the one that jumped out at me, and it was because of its length, was a song called Shard, and it was 54 seconds long. And I thought, a song under a minute, and let me put that on repeat and see what I live with. And what I ended up, it actually came out of the daily walk. When I came up with a little poem. I also love the song Belt of Asteroids, but I chose Shard. With industrial ease, the Hitachi jackhammer smashes eons of lithification into shards. This limestone will be fed into a kiln, cooked down, alchemy. The resulting lime becomes your next highway. That was my Shard poem. And I wanted to share one of my daily poems from my walk because it ties into the Shard poem. February 8th, 2022, 9:30 a.m., a concrete day. Manpower rules the day over machines. Fluorescent vests are swarming. Three men wrestle with a rigid tube. Cement coughs from its mouth, thicker and drier than I would imagine. This pile of bile is surrounded. Flat rakes cut into it with a rhythm of a work song, a prison work song, in the ultimate core workout, pulling and dragging this paste into place, doing the chorobonic dance, all the while in a frame of rebar, delicate footwork in clunky concrete covered boots. Can you even clean that off? How many pairs do they go through in a year? Do their wives even let them in the houses covered with the remains of the job site? Or are they forced to strip in the mudroom or out in the garage next to the washer and dryer? These mighty men who can wrangle cement all day long, stripped bare, waiting permission to enter their own homes. There you go.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Well, I think the Chamber of Commerce is probably going to want that poem.
I tell you, watching this concrete thing happen was amazing. The spreading. So they did in a day, probably about 50 yards of concrete, 10 foot wide, 10 inches thick. And these guys are in the rebar and they're dragging this. I mean, it's a paste. It's not a fluid at all. Although I have another little moment I was writing about, because there's these guys who are constantly flinging water with these great big brushes. They got 5-gallon buckets of water and they're flinging it on the concrete to keep it moist so the guys can move it around, which of course took me right back to the Catholic Church and sprinkling holy water. But no, to watch this thing happen. And at this point, because it's all been machines up until this point, and suddenly it was all manpower, dragging this concrete into place, smoothing it out, it took a day, about 50 yards of concrete they laid.
I love hearing the updates of the park. It's so visceral because I could really picture what's going on. And I love that you turned Shard into your own plaything, basically. The interesting thing about listening to it over and over and over again is that now that whole poem has a soundtrack. So whenever you hear that tune come up, you're going to think of that poem right away, which is a quality I had not considered until I listened to Nimbus about 47 times and did a little ritual in the Imbolc ritual spot. And then the next time it came up, like 3 days later, I'm like immediately thinking of that experience. So it has a way, well, music or scent often has a way of reminding you, like getting that memory going. So I didn't realize that. And I love the way that you bent that to your will for the serial poem about what's happening in the park next door. Fantastic. Great example of how to use the material.
Yeah, it was and a nice exercise. Of course, then choosing, you're listening to all that and it's like, oh, I love that song, and oh, that's, well, maybe I could do something to that. Oh, the dance through the playlist was enjoyable also.
Good. Had you listened much Ralph Towner before this?
No, not had not heard that guitar work, which is stunning. Well, I
Yeah.
do like that classical guitar kind of sound too, but yeah.
It's from
And how
Japan.
many people he was involved with. Because I'm a fan of Weather Report. I didn't know he played with Weather Report. I didn't have, there were so many connections too. When you just delve into it a little bit, it's like, oh, I've been exposed to this music, just didn't know it.
Yeah, and your talk about proprioception is very much appreciated, and the bones, like you were saying, we only see the dry bones. It immediately reminded me of an Anne Waldman poem that I will share before the break, because I don't have my library behind me and I can't pull out and just say something about it, but I was able to pull something up on YouTube, and we'll share that. I might need a reminder because there's so much going on and so much I'm thinking about, but I really love the way you incorporated the exercise into the work that you're doing. That's fantastic.
Nope, it was good. It's a good week.
Good.
And it's been, it was nice to start that project of the daily paying attention to the walk, which is something I do for myself anyway. I always refuse to take my phone because I want the experience of nature, and and we explored it a little before when we were hunting a poem, so now it's all a hunt. Every walk is a hunt. Yep.
Absolutely. You're a better man than me, leaving your cell phone behind. I can't even stop recording videos when I'm driving the goddamn car. Much to the consternation of Bhakti Watts.
No, I would be doing the same thing. I would love the sound of the machinery and stuff. I would be recording that and trying to use it for something. But what I choose to do then is, if something catches my eye and I want to go back and document it, I will.
So that's fair enough.
Yep.
Tim, whose report? Are you ready? Oh, when you were talking about New York things, there are some literary archives in New York. I know that the New York Public Library, I think, has Kerouac's archives, but it might be worthwhile to Google Literary Archives New York, or ask some people and be able to dig into that. With something else in New York, there's Haida work in New York. Adelia, do you remember that Haida thing that's only in New York and somewhere else?
I think it's a giant canoe.
Giant canoe.
Giant dugout canoe, and let me Google it.
Wasn't the anthropologist Claude Levi-Strauss's collection?
Yeah. Let me Google and confirm, but that sounds right.
Yeah, one of the greatest collections of Haida art in the world is in New York City.
Skylar, I'd also recommend the Jewish Museum is a favorite of mine, but don't go on the Sabbath because they don't open the gift shop.
And you have to exit through the gift shop.
Yeah, but but it's so funny. The first time I visited, it's free on the Sabbath. It's free to visit the museum on the Sabbath because they can't do business, but they also don't open the gift shop or the cafe.
And Linda says the Haida are trying to get the art back from New York, so go see it while it's still there, I guess. All right. What did you say was next, Tim? Did you say?
I'm saying that Anne Graham Walker is next.
Tim, I really liked your check-in. That was really nice.
Thank you.
I like your wallpaper too. Oh, so yeah. So well, I didn't see you guys last week, but I did watch the tape, and I really enjoyed everybody's check-ins. And I'm gonna take my earphones out. I really enjoyed everybody's check-ins and everybody's poems and stuff. It was really great. And I've had a really crummy week actually. I got COVID. I still have COVID. I don't really feel very good, but yeah, I'm okay. And I'm also in cat grief because while I had COVID, oh, now that I've turned off, let me just see if I can turn that off. Now that I've taken out my ear pads, I can't hear you. I guess I better put them back in. I'll put them back in. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. I can hear you.
Okay, I just can't hear myself. Yeah. Well, Ali, I'm doing my class, so yeah. Yeah. While I was in COVID, my old 18-and-a-half-year-old cat, who we've been nursing through old age, she just decided that was it. I've had enough, and she just stopped eating and drinking and curled up on her bed and died. So that also happened. So I did manage, though, in spite of everything, to read the material and write a poem. Oh yeah, but do you want me to do my check-in before I read my poem? I can do that first. Yeah.
Yeah, tell us what you need, and I'll be Johnny on the spot with a share.
So I have my iPad resting. I'm in bed. I have my iPad resting on my knees, and my pillow. I have my arms resting. The Ralph Towner, I love the music, and I thought it was, I really love the rich sound. And I just thought, Paul, it was really interesting that it said that he only uses acoustic instruments, a nylon 6-string and a steel string 12 string. And he's a multi-instrumentalist and overdubs. Is that true? Does he still do that?
He does some overdubs, yeah. And did anyone read that he had been known to put a matchbook in the guitar?
Yeah. Yeah, I read that. I thought that was really.
Did you see he was from Chehalis, Washington?
But now he lives in Italy.
He lives in Rome. So that tune, Dolomiti Dance, is about the Dolomites, where the next Winter Olympics are going to be.
Yeah. Anyway, I really enjoyed listening to that when I had COVID, and it was really great. Lorena Niederker, I watched those documentaries. They were frustratingly short. I love the image of the ice chopping, and especially that part. That was kind of a high point. Really beautiful images, and using tools I've never seen. Does anybody who lives in the icy parts of the States recognize those amazing tools for chopping the ice? They look so sort of otherworldly to me.
We got to get somebody from Wisconsin to be on the call.
From Wisconsin, yeah. And the compression. And what struck me in terms of the description of her life as a poet was the amazing contrast between her and Robert Bly, because we'd seen the documentary about Robert Bly's life, and his was so sort of expansive, and hers was so compressed, and her fear of becoming invisible, and he definitely wasn't afraid of becoming invisible, and yet there were certain kind of similarities between them, in that they both had this place that they were connected to, and so I thought that was really interesting. Did she ever get married? I think she did get married, didn't she?
She got married to Al, who had one arm, and he was her driver on the Lake Superior Drive. And when she died, he survived her, and he said something to the effect of, "Never marry a famous person."
Okay. Okay. Well, I want to move along because I don't want to take up too much time. But the story about the Colorado fires, which I thought was amazing proprioceptive piece of journalism. I don't know why you assigned that, but I really, as a journalist, I just loved it, and it took me right there, and I found it really terrifying. And I'm aware that there's a whole new normal in terms of the weather on the West Coast, because I know in California that the Diablo and Santana winds in November used to blow over wet ground because it used to be rainy season. And now they blow over hot, dry grasses and desiccated pines. And I've actually watched fires start right before my eyes, as they do that. So it's a kind of annual apocalypse in the making. And the Colorado one was so spooky in that it took place in suburbia. And I thought the images of people actually, continuing to push their shopping carts as these apocalyptic clouds were right there. I thought that was just such an amazing sort of metaphor of a society basically at the in an apocalypse, because they sort of continued to shop and push their shopping carts out
They needed to go
as
down
the
the
world
aisle.
was.
They needed to go down the aisle that sold the fire extinguishers.
Yeah, well, they
There were a
needed to
couple of
run.
those in the cart,
They needed to abandon their carts and just run, but they were still pushing their carts through these clouds. And I thought that was just such an amazing metaphor. And just quickly, the proprioception thing is really weird for me, because I actually have MS. And so it's just kind of really strange for me. And I actually tried, Tim, I tried your exercise to see if I could do it, with my eyes shut without losing my balance. Because I don't have huge mobility issues. I have, I can still sort of hike and stuff like that. Although on steep, uneven ground, I have to use my two poles. But I do have balance issues. And I was like, well, can I actually stand with my eyes shut? And do I have proprioception? Or will I lose my balance? So before I got COVID, I was actually experimenting to see if I could do that without losing my balance. I think I can do it on good days and not on bad days. But I do have a different personal sense of proprioception, and yeah. So it's a different kind of journey for me.
I'm glad you reported on that. And this calls to mind, we know there is such a thing as proprioception. There's a lot of information about it. They quite often, as is the case in North American medical literature, it's when proprioception goes bad that they start investigating it. However, are there exercises, I'm sure there are, to build one's proprioception? And this is where I think people like you, Ann, with MS come in, because that might be something that helps your situation. So these are some of the questions I'm interested in finding out about as this investigation of proprioception continues. So I'm really grateful that you tried them. And I would suggest you buy the Lorene Niedeker video, because I can't find my copy, and it's a pisser. I spent $30 plus shipping, and she ought to have it online. And but it's worth it if you want to follow up. There's also there's also a biography about Lorene Niedeker. I have it at home in my collection, but I thought that was well done as well. And the connection between her and Zukofsky. Do not mention Louis Zukofsky if you visit Fort Atkinson, Wisconsin, because he is a persona non grata who insisted she abort the twins that he impregnated her.
Oh, right. And she probably regretted that for her whole life. Yeah. Well, just starting to cough, so I better try and read this while I can. Right. So, a few weeks ago, when we were talking about Joanne Kiker, I was saying that I had these journals that I kept. They were sort of fragmented poems that I kept when I was in a friend of mine, my friends of mine from Australia they don't have it anymore, but they had a yawl that they kept in Greece, and they would go there during the Australian winters, and they invited us to join them. So we went sailing with them. So I kept these journals, and I thought, okay, well, I haven't really been going anywhere in these icy, snowy winter that we just had, but especially, well, anyway, last week, the last few days when I had COVID, I went back to that journal, and I did actually fix up one of the poems, worked with one of the poems that I had written in that journal. So here it is. It's called, yeah, I'll read it off the screen. In a dream, not a dream, I revisit Galaxides, that's kind of the title and the first line. In a dream, not a dream, I revisit Galaxides. Blinding white stones rim Homer's sea, the land long denuded of all natural shade. All that cool May, we sailed through Greece with my Australian school friends, crewing their 60-foot yawl, steel-hulled, custom built as a getaway boat for an Argentine dirty war general. His design's still on board, but he didn't get away. My friends bought the yawl from an American couple who picked it up cheap in their youth, turned it into their home, lifelong sailors growing feeble. Whether drifting through life on a boat or climbing toward old age, leading a horse, each day is a journey. Basho, the traveler, said that. The water in Galaxides is clear turquoise in the shallows, while the narrow streets slope downward like an old woman rising to shake the crumbs off her lap. Widows and widows wearing everything black load up their string bags, the crow sounds of their haggling voices. My mission ashore is at the butcher's, where there's a butcher and a butcher's son. I asked Demetrios for a leg of lamb. He leaps from behind the counter, unhooks a whole dead lamb from his gut-cluttered shop window, upsets the buzzing flies, chooses a knife that slices easily through bones. That little lamb, a quadruped. Demetrius hacks off a hind quarter and gives it to his son to wrap in smooth butcher's paper, while he tidies the edges of the lamb's broken body, hooks it back in the window, giving it back to the flies. I'm clutching my little parcel of dead lamb to cook well in a fly-proof curry. 28 euros per and in a hurry to escape. But Demetrios has decided to open his heart to me. You sail on boat? You see my son Sebastian? He builds model boat, builds it with balsa. You show the lady, Sebastian. Sebastian is like a small darting fish, black-haired and wiry, with shy hands. He pauses at first, then disappears to the back of the store, only to reappear with his prize. Pulls out his little balsa boat, its hull delicately flared to port and to starboard, the details picked out in bright eggshell colors. It is exquisite. That's a very beautiful boat, Sebastian, I say. Demetrius, are you training Sebastian to be a butcher like you? Demetrius shakes his head. Sebastian, he no like being a butcher, but what I gonna do? He's my only son.
Bhakti is not reconsidering her decision to be a pescatarian after your poem.
Yeah, it was really hard finding things to eat that weren't covered with flies in those markets because there was no refrigeration anywhere.
But just the hacking is like,
Oh, and also the hacking. Oh yeah,
yeah, it's a very visceral poem.
yeah,
Very visceral.
proprioceptive.
Yeah, I think so. It's interesting the quality, how a quality of proprioception opens us up to certain kinds of art. It changes our perspective on art in many ways. But beautiful work. I'm glad you tidied that up and dragged it out for us.
Yeah, I was really well. I found a lot of people that touched me when I was there. But it was like being in another world, of course. because I think they found me as strange as I found them.
I
Yeah.
think so. I think so.
Mhm.
I had good Greek friends growing up in Chicago, so I got a little bit of
Yeah.
Greek culture. And with the COVID, are you recovering, or how's that going? Or
Well, I did have 3 shots, so I'm going to be okay. I just got like a really, really, really sore throat and really, really sore ears and queasy and really kind of worn out. Yeah. So what is it? This is day 5. Still really kind of worn out, kind of queasy. Probably tomorrow I'll start feeling okay.
does the MS,
I'm still quarantined in my room.
yeah, does the MS make you immunocompromised?
I heard from my MS contacts that MS is actually kind of okay. It doesn't. MS people are not turning up in ICU. Yeah, good to know, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Sorry about
Yeah.
Luna.
Yeah. I'm not. I think probably that's probably. Yeah, I'm feeling really bad about Luna. She was a really great cat. Yeah. Thank you.
My cat hit 17 and a half, and his fur started matting up,
Yeah.
on him and then dropping off. There was this big mat that was connected just at the top, and was starting almost
Yeah,
totally
she
separated.
was getting
Yeah,
really
and it
matted.
looked like a
Yeah.
little wing. It was like a wing,
Yeah.
on him.
Yeah.
And Ella was just a toddler, not even walking yet. So she would find what I was calling these feline dreadlocks and actually kind of sucking on them, putting them in their mouth and sucking on them. And um, it was pretty disgusting, but somebody told me that's
Yeah.
going to be good for her immune system.
Do you know, but to tell Bhakti about the disgusting hacking of the meat, it was actually really hard to find vegetables in Greece because it's so hot there that there really weren't, interestingly, there were hardly any vegetables in the market. There was just tomatoes and a few onions, bit of lettuce. That was really like pretty much it. Yeah. Really hard, bad place to be a vegetarian.
There you have it.
Yeah. You were kind of forced to eat meat and fish. And like I say, you had to really make sure you cooked it because there were usually flies on it. Yeah.
Well, there you have it. Okay.
Yeah.
Nice check-in. Beautiful, beautiful poem.
Thank you.
I'm glad
Yeah.
you're getting some writing done. I'm glad you're able to make the switch from your other kind of writing to this kind of writing.
Yeah. Well, it took me a little while. It took a couple of weeks. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a hard thing to do, I guess.
Mm.
Who's next, Anne?
Oh, I have to see
and
the
New York. Do you have
screen.
any New York tips? Yes,
I
no?
actually do. I haven't been to New York for a long time, but at one time I was at university. I was an art history student, a few miles up the Hudson River, and I used to hit all the museums. And one of my favorites was the Frisk, because it was just a really nice size, and it's got some really cool stuff in it. Some really nice stuff. So I used to like to go there because it's a really nice building, and it just had some really cool stuff in it. So. You can kind of handle seeing it. It's not overwhelming. It's got a nice garden too.
What about that park that they made of the abandoned L line? What do they call it? Highland Park or something like that? Have you heard about that?
It's probably
Highline Park.
The High Line.
Yeah. That'd be something cool. I didn't see that when I was in New York, but that'd be cool. All right, Ann, I'm sorry.
So I'm going to pick Laura.
Thanks, Anne. Okay. In terms of the proprioception article, I underlined some stuff that made a lot of sense to me, including this discussion of Hygenian.
Lynn Hagenian.
Lynn Hagenian. The author says Lynn Hagenian provides what is perhaps the best explanation of Olson's projective verse, which when she suggests that in an open text with vertical intensity and horizontal extensivity, a psychology is generated through the poem as ideas cross the landscape and become the horizon and weather. And that struck me. I get kind of turned off by things that are so abstract and like dense, but this I read and I thought that means something to me. It feels kind of like some of what I'm doing. So
How do you mean that? It feels what I'm doing.
So I've been writing these little pieces that I call little postcards. They're not actually postcards. They've gotten quite a bit longer, but ideas cross the landscape and become the horizon and weather is perfect because I feel like I don't know where I'm going, but the ideas come in and fill in to create a landscape that I'm walking into, perhaps not consciously. So I thought that it fit. So I did the exercise. I'll share the little piece that I came up with just right before the class. I used Father Time and just listened to that in a loop. And I just want to say this is not a masterpiece, but I get so much out of writing like that. And it does shift me in a way and make me feel good. So I feel like if it makes me feel good, it's got to be good, right? Even if the poem may not be striking. But let me share screen. Okay, Father Time. Exercise equals playing with gravity. What equals playing with time? Consciousness shift? My boys wander me and my mom on a mystery walk. They lead us until they've turned us around, tell us, lead us back. I try to remember the breadcrumb path they made us to new perspective, getting lost. I am the king of stories that go nowhere, a friend tells me, saying sorry for telling me that a story I told him wasn't interesting. I sort of know what he means, and I'm not sure it's true that his stories go nowhere. Inspiredly nowhere in a way Hallmark doesn't get, but I do. When I show up at another friend's house as arranged, she and her partner are 3 sheets to the wind, adrift. My role is sober, like always. She slurs to me, talking about relationships. We should just love the people we love and let things be what they are. Even, I think, if things seem out of sequence. So anyway, I love the idea mentioned in last week's class of who said if you are writing less than a poem a day, your standards are too high?
William Stafford.
Okay, I love that. And I feel like if I can write a poem like that every day and just as an exercise in shifting my consciousness, and then things come out of it that are cool. Like I think, oh, that's a little cool phrase or, something that can, like the alluvial method, take something from that into a new poem. Anyway.
And Carlton would suggest my boys wander me would be one of those such phrases.
Yeah.
Which I noted as well. And I thought he was astute for pointing out, perceptive.
So yeah, and I'm interested in the Lorene Niedeker stuff. With all of the women poets, as a contrast to Diane de Prima, I feel like, these are 2 women who were both so devoted to their craft. And yet one had kids and one didn't. And, one had more going on and it can work both ways. So that's encouraging to me to see and to, think about Robert Bly too. in terms of one's energies are spent.
Lorene, her father had this long-going affair with this woman and he basically fucked away their whole resort business. Eventually, it was all concubine owned all of it, and Lorene had to be taken out of college because her mother, I believe her mother was either blind or deaf, I forget, and so Lorene had to work. She didn't get to finish college because she had to help earn a living so that the family could make ends meet. And she was working at the Horde Dairy Museum and working so hard, focusing on creating this newsletter, that her eyesight started to go, and she was not able to work at that job. So she was scrubbing hospital floors on her hands and knees so that the family could get by because of her father's lust and infidelity. So and she just, I mean, you know, she died at what, 67, you know, so she didn't have the greatest run in terms of years, but her devotion to place is extraordinary. You so get a sense, and if you ever get a chance to visit Fort Atkinson, Wisconsin, and Black Hawk Island, and see the tiny little shed that she had as her house until she married Al and was able to move closer to the river on this house that has stilts, so if it would flood, it would just go underneath. It's just a remarkable, humble, beautiful story. And, you know, I think people are going to remember her work more so than they do Louis Zukofsky, to be honest with you. And he's one of the main objectivists and lots of stuff written about him. But she's a really remarkable person. And you know, if you feel called, buy that video, that $30, pay that. It's worth having. And I wish it would be different. I wish I could find my copy, and then I would put it on Vimeo private and give you guys the link, and we'd be able to see it. But so it goes. Now, you, last we heard, were in Montana arguing a case, so we want the details on that to see how it went. And also, we would just like to, are you back in LA now?
Yeah, I'm back in LA. Argument went well. He peppered me with questions. He said at one point, "Isn't this forest overgrown? It just needs to be cut and burned." And it may look overgrown to you and me, but what about the lynx? What about the snowshoe hare on which the lynx depend? So I think he heard me, but we'll see.
No decision has been rendered?
No, not yet.
Well, good luck with that. I think we ought to take a break before we go on. So let's take a break, and I'll come back with the Tim Mateer inspired poem, and let's try and be back at 12 after at the very latest, 12 after.